He had no idea the little girl crying under the oak tree would uncover the one secret his family had buried for years. No idea that one act of kindness would change not only her life but his own. And when he finally learned who she was connected to, his world would never be the same again. But before we begin this emotional journey, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel, Hopeful Stories, where real hearts meet real miracles, and where every story reminds us that compassion still has the power to heal. The sun was setting behind Westwood Elementary, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Most teachers had already gone home, their cars gone from the parking lot. But Ethan Carter, the young English teacher everyone called Mr. C, was still sitting at his desk, grading essays by the dim light of his classroom lamp. He was tired, as always. The day had been long, too many students, too few supplies, and a paycheck that barely covered rent. But he loved his job. He loved his students. Even if life outside the classroom was falling apart, inside he still felt useful. He rubbed his temples, ready to lock up for the night when he noticed something outside the window. A small figure sat on the steps near the playground, still, quiet, her head buried in her knees. It was getting dark, and the drizzle had started to fall again. Concerned, Ethan grabbed his coat and walked out. The air was cold, heavy with the smell of rain. "Hey there," he said softly as he approached. "You okay?" The girl looked up, startled. She couldn't have been more than 10. Her eyes were red, cheeks streaked with tears. I'm fine," she stammered, trying to hide her face. He crouched down beside her. "You don't look fine. What's your name?" "Lila," she whispered. "Well, Lila, I'm Mr. Carter. I teach 5th grade. You in one of my classes?" She shook her head. "No, 4th, he smiled kindly. "Ah, Mrs. Benson's class. Good teacher, so. What's keeping you here so late, huh?" Lila hesitated, glancing away. "I missed the bus. My dad was supposed to pick me up, but he didn't come." Ethan's heart sank. "Did you try calling him?" She nodded. He didn't answer. Something in her voice, soft, trembling, hit Ethan in the chest. He knew that sound. The sound of waiting for someone who might never show up. He sighed gently. "Come on, let's get you out of the rain." He led her back inside, wrapped her in a dry blanket from the lost and found box, and handed her a cup of warm cocoa from the teacher's lounge. She sat quietly at his desk, her little fingers wrapped around the mug, her eyes fixed on the window. "Thank you," she murmured. "No problem," he said, smiling. "Everyone needs a little help sometimes." She looked at him curiously. "Do you have kids, Mr. Carter?" He shook his head. "No, not yet." "Maybe someday," she frowned slightly. "You'd be a good dad," he chuckled softly. "That's sweet of you to say." After an hour, when the rain grew heavier, Ethan decided it was too late to keep waiting. "All right, let's call your dad again," he said gently. Lila hesitated, then nodded. She handed him a small piece of paper with a number written in childish handwriting. He dialed. No answer. Then again. Still nothing. But on the third try, someone picked up, a man's voice, low and tired. "Hello? Hi, this is Ethan Carter. I'm a teacher at Westwood Elementary. Your daughter, Lila, she's here with me. I think you missed her pickup." There was a pause. Then the man spoke quietly. I'll be there in 10 minutes. When he arrived, the air in the room changed. The man looked exhausted, his clothes worn, his hands trembling slightly as he took off his cap. "Thank you," he said softly. "I lost track of time. Work's been rough." Ethan nodded, sensing something deeper. "No problem. She's safe. You've got a good kid." The man smiled faintly, glancing down at Lila. "Yeah, she's the only good thing I ever did right." Something about his face tugged at Ethan's memory. There was something familiar in his eyes, but he couldn't place it. As they left, Lila waved. "Bye, Mr. Carter." He waved back. "Take care, kiddo." When they disappeared into the rain, Ethan stood by the window for a long time, staring after them. That uneasy feeling wouldn't go away. He'd seen that man before. Somewhere, but where? That night, as Ethan sat in his tiny apartment, eating leftover soup and marking essays, his mind kept drifting back to Lila. The sadness in her eyes, the way her father had looked, broken, tired, familiar. Then, as he flipped through an old family photo album his mother had mailed him last year, his spoon clattered to the floor. There, buried in a faded photograph from 20 years ago, was his own father, standing beside the very same man he had seen tonight. They were young, smiling, arms around each other, and beneath the photo were the words written in his mother's neat handwriting. Robert Carter and Daniel Miles, best friends forever. Ethan froze. Daniel Miles. That was the name printed on Lila's school records. Lila's father was his father's oldest friend. And if what Ethan remembered about that friendship was true, then the truth about what broke them apart decades ago was something that could change everything he thought he knew about his family. Sometimes the smallest moments reveal the biggest secrets. But for Ethan Carter, this was only the beginning. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hopeful Stories, because in Chapter 2, Ethan will discover why his father and Daniel's friendship ended in tragedy, and how one little girl will unknowingly help two broken men heal from the past. The night Ethan found that photograph, everything changed. He couldn't sleep. The faces of his father and Daniel Miles haunted him, the same man who had shown up to collect Lila, eyes weary and lost. Why had his father never spoken of him? Why had a friendship strong enough to be called brotherhood vanished without a trace? He turned the old photograph over. On the back were faint words written by his late mother. Some wounds never heal, even between best friends. The next day, Ethan arrived at school early. His mind wasn't on teaching. It was tangled in the past. He needed answers. He needed to understand what had happened between his father, Robert Carter, and Daniel Miles, the man whose daughter now looked up to him like a hero. After classes ended, Ethan made a decision. He would visit his father. Robert Carter lived alone in a small nursing home at the edge of town. Age and illness had slowed him down, but his mind was still sharp. Ethan hadn't visited in weeks, partly because of work, partly because of distance that words never bridged. When he walked into the quiet room, his father looked up from a crossword puzzle and smiled faintly. "Son, you look tired." Ethan sat down. "Yeah, long week." Robert studied him for a moment. "Something's on your mind. I can see it in your eyes." "What's wrong?" Ethan took a deep breath, pulling the faded photograph from his pocket and placing it on the table. "This." Robert's expression froze. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for the photo. "Where did you find that?" "Mom sent it." "Met him, Dad?" His father looked up sharply. "Met who?" "Daniel Miles." Silence fell between them, heavy and cold. The rain outside began to tap against the window like a heartbeat. Robert leaned back, staring at the photo as if it might burn him. "Daniel," he whispered. "I haven't heard that name in over 20 years. Who is he really, Dad?" Ethan pressed gently. "Why did you stop being friends?" Robert swallowed hard, his voice cracking. "Because I failed him, Ethan. I failed him in a way no friend ever should." Ethan waited quietly, his heart pounding. "It was 1998, Robert began slowly. "Daniel and I worked at the same factory. We were both young, both with families, both trying to make ends meet. He was the kind of man everyone trusted, kind, loyal, hard-working. He had a wife, a baby girl, and I had you and your mother." He paused, staring into the distance. "Then the factory caught fire one night, electrical fault. The alarms didn't go off. Everyone ran for their lives. Daniel and I were the last two inside. He ran back for someone trapped in the office. I told him I'd follow, but I didn't." Ethan's chest tightened. "I froze." His father whispered. "Smoke everywhere, people screaming. I panicked. I ran. Daniel went in alone. He saved the man but lost his wife in the fire. She didn't make it. And I, his best friend, was too much of a coward to go back. Tears filled his eyes, old and weary. He never forgave me. I never forgave myself. We buried his wife together, and that day he told me to never come near his family again. Ethan's throat ached. Dad, he's struggling. He's raising that little girl on his own. He looks broken. Robert nodded slowly. I know. I've kept track of him all these years from afar. I just didn't think I had the right to show my face again. Ethan sat in silence, feeling the weight of both their pain. Then quietly he said, Maybe it's time, Dad. Maybe forgiveness isn't gone. Maybe it's just waiting. 2 days later, Ethan decided to visit Daniel after school. He found him outside a small repair shop, hunched over an old car. When Daniel looked up, surprise flickered across his face. Mr. Carter, what brings you here? Ethan hesitated, clutching the photograph in his pocket. I needed to talk to you about my father. Daniel's expression hardened instantly. Your father? Yes, Ethan said softly. Robert Carter. The wrench in Daniel's hand froze mid-air. For a long moment he said nothing. Then his jaw tightened. I told him I never wanted to see him again. I know, Ethan replied gently. But maybe it's time you did. Daniel laughed bitterly. Time? 25 years too late for time, son. Maybe not, Ethan said. You've been carrying this pain alone. So has he. He never stopped regretting what happened. He told me everything. Daniel looked away, his eyes glassy. He let my wife die, Ethan. Do you understand that? He ran when she needed him. I do, Ethan whispered. But if you could have seen the way he spoke about that night, the guilt, the years of silence, you'd know that he's been punishing himself every single day. My father's dying, Daniel. He doesn't want pity. He just wants to say he's sorry. The silence stretched on until Lila's voice broke it. Daddy? Daniel turned. His daughter stood in the doorway of the shop, her school bag still on. She smiled at Ethan. Mr. Carter, he smiled softly back. Hey, Lila. Her innocence hung in the air like sunlight breaking through clouds, and in that moment Daniel Miles's anger cracked. Just a little. Tell your father, he said finally, voice trembling. If he really wants to say sorry, I'll listen. That weekend, in the quiet garden of the nursing home, two old friends sat facing each other for the first time in decades. No grand speeches, no shouting, just tears, apologies, and silence filled with years of pain. Daniel's voice shook. You could have saved her. Robert's hands trembled. I know. I should have. I think about it every night. Then Daniel looked up, his eyes softening. And yet, you still sent your son to teach mine about kindness. Maybe that's your way of saving me. Robert's lips quivered. I'm sorry, Daniel. I know, Daniel whispered. Then, for the first time in 25 years, he reached out and gripped his old friend's hand. Standing nearby, Ethan watched, tears filling his eyes. Lila stood beside him, smiling faintly, unaware she had just healed a wound older than she was. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can reach across generations. A teacher's compassion brought two broken men face to face, and a little. Girl's innocence became the bridge between forgiveness and love. Ethan never told Lila what really happened between their fathers. She didn't need to know, because some miracles aren't found in words, they're found in hearts learning how to forgive. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel, Hopeful Stories, where every tale reminds us that kindness can heal what time could not. Because here at Hopeful Stories, every act of compassion is the beginning of a miracle.